Hi, everybody. I am Branden Sewell. I am the owner of Seal Pro Painting, and I'm also the host of the Off the Ladder podcast. And we exist to help home service business owners learn so that they can lead well and ultimately live life off of the ladder. Today's episode is going to be just a solo episode. And I'm also streaming this episode live to my social media. And what I want to talk about in this episode is two things: the power of gratitude, just as a business owner, and avoiding the comparison trap. I was just, there's been a couple of things that have inspired this episode, but, I think about my own journey and, speaking to a financial advisor. I think it was like 2 weeks ago, just going over, personal finances and business finances and things like that. And we were talking, and I just explained to him, I said, I'm 32. I don't really know if I'm, where I am supposed to be, if that's a right term, or in comparison to other people my age or other business owners. Like, what am I doing right? What am I doing wrong? Am I where I should be financially? And but I told him, I said, in reality, that doesn't really matter to me because I'm so thankful for what I have. And I told him, I said, when I was, from the time I was in middle school to high school, um, me and my siblings and my single mom, we experienced being homeless um, quite often. I spent a lot of time from middle school to high school just moving a lot, um, living with friends, living in hotels, um, and just not really having um, a solid, like, steady, stable environment. And as I reflect on that and I look at where I am today, I was like, I'm thankful that um, I'm married. I have two beautiful kids. I have a house, um, somewhere where I can call home, and it's stable. It's like I'm not moving all the time. I'm not all over the place. And um, you know, just I've been really blessed in my opinion, you know. And as a business owner, obviously I have ambitions, I have goals, I have dreams, I have things that I want to accomplish, and I can look and I can see the success of others or what seems like a success. And obviously on social media, people are constantly flaunting their success. And it's easy for me to look at that and say, wow, I wish I had, that house, or I wish I had that car, or I wish I could go on that vacation. I wish I could be where they are, whatever the situation is. But then when I go back and I take a second and I just pause, I say, you know what? Where was I and where am I now? And I have so much to be grateful for. And I was on Facebook this morning, and Jobber had posted something, and they were talking about um, getting off the truck or getting off the ladder, as we say. There's a lot of different terms for it. And, someone said, I got off the ladder, but now I feel like I'm more burnout than ever before. And it just led me to thinking about, we can get thrown off course so easily if we don't remain grateful and if we don't avoid comparison. And, I think the reason that is because when we're not grateful and we don't practice gratitude, then we're going to be constantly striving and in a place of like restlessness, trying to get the next thing, achieve the next thing, get the next thing, reach the next revenue mile marker, whatever the case may be, have a X amount of trucks on the road for our home service company. Um, and that constant striving and not, just stopping and being grateful can cause us to have no peace. Um, and if we're constantly comparing, that only fuels and feeds that lack of gratitude. It robs us of the joy of where we are now and what we've been able to accomplish. And it says you're not going to be able to have joy or have peace or fulfillment unless you get to that next place. And as a business owner, I've always, just kind of thought to myself, my goal, sure, I want to grow. I'm a person, I have a growth mindset. I constantly want to grow. I'm constantly looking at my business and thinking to myself, how can I go to the next level? I'm constantly trying to educate myself to help me personally grow so that I can get to that next level. But I've always been very intentional about saying, okay, Brandon, what is your why? And if I sit down and I say, okay, my why is my family. You know, I want to have a successful business because I want to be present as a husband. I want to be present as a father. Um, and I want to be able to cultivate something that I didn't have as a kid. My parents were divorced. Um, my mom remarried a couple times. My dad remarried, and like dad lived in Maryland. I lived all over the place, really. Never really saw my dad much. There were sometimes I'd see him once a year, sometimes I wouldn't see him for a couple years. Um, and so anyway, I was like, okay, well, my why is I want to have the family that I didn't have and the stability that I didn't have as a kid. So anything that is going to take away from that, that is going to hinder that why, is not my priority. And so there's a lot of things in business that I could do. I could grow faster, I could make more money, I could do a lot of things. But if I feel like they could take away from the why, my priority, which is my family, then I'm not going to do that unless I can do it and keep what matters most intact, which is my family. And the other thing too is, and I should mention this first because it's most important, is my faith. Um, I always say this: I wanna grow the business. I wanna achieve success, but I want to do it without sacrificing my Christian values, my morals, and things like that. And I'm not perfect by any means. I've made mistakes. There's been seasons in the business where I haven't done the best, and I have to reflect and say, okay, well, how did I get to that place? Um, and how did I make decisions that led to me not holding up that priority of like my faith, my integrity, my example in Christ is like the number one focus. And I'm really hard on myself when, if I feel like I'm not representing Christ well in my business, that's like super, that bothers me probably more than anything, because I want so badly for people uh, to be an example of Christ, so that people look at me and they say, "Oh, wow, Branden is a man of God. He runs his business with integrity. He's a great example of his Christian faith. He doesn't just talk about his values, he lives them out, he walks them out." And I want that to be my example. So when I fall short of that, I'm very hard on myself. And I'm like, okay, I've got to figure out how to like, change something so that I'm being a great example of my faith. But, just to go back is like when you get really clear on like, okay, this is who I am. This is what matters most to me. This is why I'm doing this business. Then you can create some protection in your life of things that are going to try and steal your focus away and cause you to focus on something that is not going to support your why. And so if you're in business and you feel burnout and run out, that's probably a pretty good indicator that you are not um, doing things and prioritizing things to support your why and your true identity of who you are. And the reality is your business, who you are is different than anybody else. So how you do your business and why you do your business is going to be tailored to you, but the foundation of it is understanding this is who I am, this is why I'm doing this, and this is what I need to do in my business to support my why. And like for example, if let's say we'll just take this as an example. The focus of this podcast is getting off the ladder in your home service business. So why though? Why get off the ladder? The whole purpose of getting off the ladder is so that you can build a business that enables you to focus on what matters most. Now, let's say you get off the ladder, but you're doing things in such a way that it's not leading to the ultimate goal of supporting your why, then you're doing something wrong. You've got to change something. There's something that you have to work on, and maybe that's your mindset. Maybe that's your leadership. Maybe that's the systems in your business. Maybe that's your personal finances. Maybe that's your marriage. Maybe that is your relationship with your kids. But there's something that is putting stress on your business to cause you to not really fulfill your main purpose, which is to really like chase after your why and your passion. And so I just know for myself, like, you have to be very clear of what matters most in your business. So like for me, I know that yeah, we all want to make more money, right? It helps to pay our bills and do all of those things and do fun things and pursue things that we want to do in life. But you have to get really honest with yourself and say, hey, if I had more money, but I had to get it at the expense of maybe a marriage or your family, your relationship with your kids, or your health, is that money worth it? We like to think to ourselves like, oh man, if I made more money, then I could take my kids on that vacation to wherever and spend a ton of money, and then I'll be fulfilled and my family will be happy. When really, you're going to be more fulfilled and happy if you work a little bit less, make a little less money, live within your means, and spend time with your kids every night and spend time with your spouse. And maybe you don't go on a lavish vacation, but maybe you take them to do something fun on the weekend in your local town or city. And you learn to appreciate, again, this goes back to gratitude. It's like appreciate the fact that you built a business, and yeah, maybe that doesn't look like you're making um hundreds of thousands of dollars a year in personal income, but maybe you're making an honest and reasonable wage, but you've created a business that gives you freedom and you can spend time with your family. I can guarantee you when you get to your deathbed, or if you talk to somebody who's in there at the end of their life, they're in their 90s, maybe they're on their deathbed, and you ask them, hey, what do you wish you could go back and change in life? I don't think that somebody's going to say, "Hey, I wish I could have made more money, even if it meant my marriage failed or I didn't have a relationship with my kids." I think they're going to say, "Hey, you know what? I wish I would have focused on what mattered more. I wish I would have focused on my faith and gotten closer to God, and dedicated myself to service and of others. And I wish I would have spent more time with my family and my loved ones and been surrounded by people I love." I think those are the things that you're going to look back and wish, man, here I am. I'm at the end of my life. I wish I could just spend one more second with my loved ones. And so I think when you get this bigger perspective, um, it helps you to eliminate those things, those, forks in the road where it's like, hey, I could go this way, but it's going to completely take me away from what matters most to me. Um, and I think too, like, you don't realize, like, when you maybe you achieve what you think and you think it's going to have this fulfillment, but the reality is it could be more empty than where you are now. And so I think it goes back again to like that gratitude, that deep gratitude of just saying, hey, you know what, God, I'm thankful for where I am today. I'm fine. You may not be where you want to be. You may not be where I am. You may not be where somebody else is that you look up to. But where you are now is part of your journey, and you can find something to be grateful for right where you're at. Maybe it's, hey, I'm grateful that I have somewhere to lay my head at night and call home. It may not be a mansion, it may not be fancy, but it's shelter. Hey, I'm thankful that I have some money in my bank account and I can buy food and put food on the table and provide. Um, I'm thankful that I was able to wake up today and that I just have another day to just give my best. Hey, I'm thankful for my spouse. I'm thankful for their commitment to you and to me. Um, I'm thankful for their faithfulness and their love and their support. I'm thankful for my kids that they bring me joy and fulfillment in life and purpose that drives me. I'm thankful for just the ability, my health, to be the ability to move, to function. I'm thankful for the opportunity to even struggle and learn and grow. And so I think it's just like try to find what matters most and be thankful for that. Practice gratitude. When you practice that gratitude, it really helps you to like just slow down and enjoy the process, and then just realize that your business, your process is not going to look like everybody else's. It's unique to you, it's unique to your goals, it's unique to your values, your principles, it's unique to your passions, your ultimate purpose in life. And so don't compare, but get clear on who you are. And I kind of like talked so much about the gratitude and those principles in the beginning, but I want to share. I've shared in another episode some of my story, but um, I'm gonna get a little, I guess, like a little bit more detailed on why I'm so grateful for where I am. And there's a lot to it, but man, my past has made me so thankful for where I am today. And I think that's just a powerful thing. So, um, in another episode, I think let me look it up, and if you want to go back and listen to that some of this might be a little repetitive. but I'm going to try and share more details. But so, episode 60, I talked about how I've moved 50 times by the age of 23, and just how that kind of like helped me become resilient and adaptable. But um, for this episode, I want to try and just dive deeper into um, those struggles, those sacrifices as a kid, and just how it made me who I am today and why I'm grateful. So my story is when I was a kid, my parents divorced. My dad was a musician. I don't actually know exactly what my mom did back then. I think she was like a paralegal, and I think she was in the Air Force for a little while. But and then she went. I know ultimately she went into the mortgage industry. Um, but anyway, so parents divorced when I was like probably one, maybe even some like in my first year of life, give or take. Um, I lived in Maryland, and I grew up with my dad around a lot from like the time that I was one until I was about five. And so, both lived in Maryland, spent time with my dad a lot, saw him, spent time with my family on his side, and that was great. My mom remarried to my brother's dad, so I have a little brother. His name's Dylan. He's like maybe I don't know, I think he's 3 years younger than me, so he's probably like 28 or 29, something like that. Um, and my mom and my stepdad at that time decided that they were going to move from Maryland to South Carolina. So we moved to South Carolina, and um, at that point, that really started the process of not seeing my dad much. So I would, at that time, I'd maybe see him like once or twice a year, and it was usually going and spending some time with him in the summer. And if I didn't see him in the summer, I would at least see him for the holidays. So going there for like either Thanksgiving or Christmas, usually Christmas. And then, so yeah, started that process at five of not seeing him much. Now, my mom, when she was married to my stepdad, in the beginning, we moved a lot because my mom was like moving for different job opportunities. So she was in the mortgage industry, so I remember when we moved to, I think she was working for like Century 21 back in this time, and so like she was working for a branch in South Carolina, and then we moved to North Carolina. Now it got a little bit harder to see my dad because now we're even we were further um away from my dad. um or wait, hold on. We were South Carolina and North Carolina. Well, anyway, I ended up seeing him like maybe once a year. Usually it was Christmas. Um, and then let's see, we moved from North Carolina to um, Alabama. And around the time we moved to Alabama, I think I was maybe 8 years old. And my mom and my brother's dad, they separated. So now my mom was a single mom, and she was raising me, my sister, my brother, my oldest sister. But my oldest sister was struggling with drugs, alcohol abuse, and like not just. I mean, there's about an 8 year age gap between us. So like when I was 8 or 9, she was in high school. Um, but she got into like heavy drugs, so crystal meth, heroin, um, pills, drinking, just really bad. And so that my oldest sister's decisions put a lot of stress on my mom and our family. Um, Now when mom and my stepdad initially split. My mom would like, she'd date different people. We'd, see a lot of, you know, relationships with men coming in and out of our lives. So I didn't see my dad a lot. I didn't have a solid father figure in my life anymore. And so really I struggled with that obviously as like a young boy growing up, didn't have a dad around. Didn't have a solid father figure. The only example I saw were like these men coming in and out of our lives. So that was part of a struggle for me. Um, Now we moved from Alabama back to North Carolina um, after the split. At this point, I was probably like 9 years old, and we were back in North Carolina. And um, I guess this would have been approaching like the the recession of like the 2008 2009 time frame. So this is like late 90s, early 2000s, and kind of approaching into that. So, um, go from elementary school into middle school. Everything's, it's okay. It's a little rocky financially. We're moving around a lot. We're living with like, moving, we'd like move into a rental property. We'd get kicked out. We'd like move somewhere else. We'd maybe move in with my mom's boyfriend or move in with a friend. And anyway, it 50 times by the time I was 23. Like I can't even when I go back and I think about that time in my life from like the age of like 9 or 10 to 23, it's like it's hard for me to think of all the different places I lived and where we moved and all of these things. It was just crazy. But obviously I had a lot of like instability, just constantly moving. Now, one thing that I will say is even in the midst of all of that stuff that was going on, in that moment, it was challenging, but for whatever reason, by God's grace, I was able to like walk through it and not feel um too bad about it. I mean, yes, it was challenging. It was hard. It sucked, but I think I just became like conditioned to it. It almost seemed like normal to me until I looked at like what I would say is like a normal family, and I was like, wow, this isn't normal. But at the same time, I was like, you know what? It is what it is. But I grew up in a little island in North Carolina called Emerald Isle. Spent most of my childhood there from the time I was 9 until I was 16. And, I just grew up like surfing and skateboarding, and that was my outlet. And so even though I went through really challenging times, I just enjoyed life. Um, I enjoyed spending time with my friends, surfing, skateboarding, and living outdoors. I was always outside, always playing. And I guess that kind of like helped me deal with the fact that, you know, um, I was constantly moving and things like that. The other side of like moving all the time is I can't tell you how many times I've lost everything. So like as a kid, like I'd have like a bedroom and I'd have like a dresser and I'd have all my clothes and I'd have these belongings and well, I just end up going through some move where like all I can remember is like I didn't have everything anymore. Um and that's a really interesting thing to go through as a kid. Like, you know, and there's details to that. I don't know if I should really go into it, but just having the understanding that we lost everything, like literally everything. The only thing that I was left with a few times from middle school to high school was like a bag of clothes. And we'd go through like these weird seasons of like it would seem like everything was getting better and then it was like back down. And it would seem like things were getting better and then it was back down. And I just remember that there is no consistency, there was no stability, there was no normal. It was just constant like change and chaos. Now, when I think of that as an adult, it's funny. Like I was just telling my wife this recently. Like, that experience as a kid made me very resilient, and it made me very adaptable to change. It also made me very comfortable with a little. Um, it's like this weird thing where I'm, yes, like that experience as a child made me want more in my life, but it's also given me like a level of contentment where I'm very grateful for the little bit that I have, because I'm like, I could, I'm so, I've achieved so much coming from that. Um, to where I am now, I'm like, wow, it just like, it blows my mind sometimes when I sit back and I think about it. I'm like, God, you've been so good to me. And there's probably some people that look at my life and they're probably, oh, it's just a normal guy, like, yeah, like, yeah. But to me, I'm like, I am so blessed. I mean, I feel like I'm just like, I was joking. I was telling my financial advisor, I was like, hey, like, my wife and I saved up like X amount of dollars, and to most people's standards, like, it probably wouldn't seem like much. But I'm like, because of where I came from, this feels like I feel incredibly blessed. And I'm like, by no means like a millionaire or something, but I just feel incredibly blessed. And I think going through what I went through as a kid, it just gave me such a perspective. And I just have so much gratitude. And so, um, yeah, going back to like the childhood story, we had finally moved to, when I was 16, we moved from North Carolina to Florida. And so like the area where I live now is where I was until I graduated from high school. And even once we moved down here, we moved a lot. My mom was a single mom, and we were constantly, moving from rental house to rental house. And we experienced like consistently, like, this wasn't just like a every once in a while thing, but we were very familiar what it was like to like have the light shut off, or have the water cut off. And like, when I think back to it now, I'm like, wow, it's so crazy. Like, we used to run over to the neighbor's house, fill up a 5 gallon bucket with water, run it back to our house just so we could like, heat up the water and in a like on the stove and like take a shower, or like have water to flush the toilets. Like, it's crazy to me. Like, think back and I'm like, wow, like and like to have like, I never, it was kind of like an adventure to me back then. It was like, wow, this is crazy. But I'm like, now, as especially as an adult, I'm like, and I have two kids, I'm like, wow, that's like, we went through some pretty challenging times. And but anyway, it's those are the kind of things that I went through as a kid. And um that the experience of going through that, I just, again, to emphasize, it was like when I was going through it, I didn't realize um that that wasn't like the normal for most other kids my age. Like, yes, there were probably kids that experienced the same things, and some that experienced worse, but it was just, I didn't realize that as a kid. I was just living life, and didn't really know what to expect. But anyway, fast forward, after moving down to Florida, another really like pivotal moment in my life was, I had just graduated from high school. Um, I didn't have a car or anything, so I used to ride my bike everywhere, like crazy distances, to work as like an ocean lifeguard and stuff like that, or like to go to church or Bible studies. And I'd ride a bike or skateboard everywhere. But I remember my mom. I didn't really have a plan after high school, but my mom had asked me like, "Hey, what are your plans?" And I was like, "I don't know. I don't plan on going to college. I'm gonna work as an ocean lifeguard." And you know, to be honest with you, I was like naive back then, and I wanted to surf professionally. Um, and I even had a thought of going into the Navy. I used to be an ocean lifeguard for a few years, and I really had this admiration for the Navy SEALs and special operations, and so there was even a part of me that wanted to pursue going into the Navy to do special ops or SWIC, which is basically they're like Navy rescue swimmers, basically. Um, but anyway, those were things that I was considering, and my mom's like, "Well, why don't you go to college?" And so she talked me out of going into the Navy and like this other option of like pursuing a surfing career. And so I applied to one college, and that was Florida Tech. Got into Florida Tech. I was there. I was going to school for business, um, and was going to get a marketing degree. And um, and really the only way my mom talked me into that was because they had a surf team, so she was like, "Well, why don't you go to college and you can, join the surf team and you'll still get to surf but you'll um, get your college in." And I was like, "Okay, well, I'll apply, and if I get in, I'll go." And so that was that was something that I pursued, and I ended up getting in. I ended up going onto the surf team, um, but in my at the end of my first semester, so I had been sharing a car with my mom. I was driving her car to school because I lived in Merritt Island. My school was in Melbourne, so it was like roughly a 45-minute to an hour drive to school. So, um, so this was like right after I turned 18. I was living with my brother at the time, and my mom and my niece and my nephew. My sister had already moved out, and my mom had told me she was dating this guy from Nashville. She was like, "Hey, I'm gonna go visit, so and so, and I'll be back in a week." And then she never came back. So I was there with my little brother, and she had taken my niece and nephew, but I was there with my little brother, and that was a really like um, just like, "Hey, you're gonna have to grow up fast right now because you don't have any other option." So I had no way to get to school. I tried like getting rides down to school for a little while, but then I was like missing too much class. My grades were suffering, and I couldn't make it happen anymore. So I ended up dropping out of college. Now, another thing that I wanted to do, but I didn't really know how to go about it, is I wanted to be a pastor. Um, and so I was like, okay, I'm gonna drop out of college. I'm gonna go to Maryland. There's a Bible college at my dad's church up there. I'm gonna go to Bible college and I'm gonna pursue full time ministry. So, um, that's essentially what ended up happening. But it took a little bit of time. I was so after my mom left, we got evicted. My brother, he went and lived with a friend, and I ended up moving in with a friend of mine. And I was working full time as an ocean lifeguard at the time, through the summer of 2011. And um, it was actually a conversation with my dad. My dad like asked me, he's like, "Hey, so what's your plan?" And I was talking to him over the phone, and I said, "Hey, um, I think I'm just going to be an ocean lifeguard, and like maybe pursue trying to move up as an ocean lifeguard over time, and maybe become a paramedic or something." And I told him, I was like, "I don't really care as long as I'm like working on the beach and I get to surf. I don't really care." He's like, "Well, do you want to like get married someday?" And I was like, "Yeah." He's like, "Do you want to have kids?" I said, "Yeah." He goes, "Well, like, how are you going to provide for a family, and how are you going to do this and that?" And I was like, those are all things I wasn't really thinking of. And so anyway, I was like, "You know what, Dad, could I move in with you up there and go to Bible college?" So He's like, yeah, yeah, sure. So I ended up going up there. I was supposed to go to orientation and then fly back and get all my stuff. I ended up going up there and like never coming back. So I left with a bag of clothes again, another time in my life where I was just like, hey, like just have a bag of clothes and figure it out. So um left all my other belongings in Florida. They ended up actually at a friend in a friend's shed down here for years. But I went up there and I pursued the Bible college thing and ended up doing that, went into ministry, and I learned a lot from that experience. That was another big like learning experience in my life of gratitude. And the interesting thing is in in ministry there's like these different movements or different emphasis that can kind of like cause you to even lose focus in your faith of like what matters most. And I felt like that really happened to me. I was super zealous, passionate about God, passionate about serving others, didn't really care about making money. I just wanted to like live for God, serve people, and that's like and just like love people and love life, like just live and just serve. And anyway, I ended up working like 7 days a week for 6 years, like working like crazy in ministry and just tons of hours. And when I was a single guy, that was fine. Like I literally just I went nonstop. um and I made a commitment to stay single for 3 years. In like that whole process, I didn't date anybody. I literally just focused on myself. That was another really like smart decision I made as a young man. Um, was not like focusing on me, focusing on becoming the man that I needed to be for a future spouse and a family. So focused on me, focused on growing and developing, and so I'm here, I'm working ministry, and then I get married, and like I'm working insane hours. Like, how many hours are there um in a 7 day week? There are 168 hours. Um, I let's see. Oh, I'm trying to do some math here. Okay. So this is no stretch. I would say that I was probably working some weeks 80 to 120 hours. Literally enough to come home, sleep for a few hours, and then get back to it. Because when I worked in ministry, my whole this is kind of I'll just break down like because and the reason why I'm sharing this is because it really applies to like how I operate as a business owner. All of this is kind of like trying to come full circle to like why I operate my business the way I do. So working in ministry. So I was the full-time graphics director for the church. So my like 8 to 4 responsibilities were to do all of the graphics, digital and print, for all of the ministries in the church. So that covered like men's ministries, women ministry, children's ministry, prison ministry, um, just anything that you can think within the church. And and then I did everything for what were called our ministries of compassion. So those were like ministries where we did outreach outside of the church. We had like a men's home, a women's home, a thrift store, all of those things. We had a thing where we would go down and throw block parties in the inner city and give away stuff. But anyway, um, all of that we also had a food warehouse. But anyway, so I was the graphics director. So I designed the graphics, digital and print for all of those, and that was a lot. On top of that, so you know, um, 8 to 4, I do that. Now in ministry, obviously, you have like meetings that you have to be in. Um, there's things that happen throughout the week, services that you have to be at, and like being on staff, I was required to be in a lot of those. So like, but anyway, like going back, so graphics director, I was on the pastoral care team. So like Monday evenings, I had to be in a pastoral care meeting. Tuesdays, I don't remember what meeting it was, but I had some type of meeting. Um, I remember Thursday evenings we had church. Friday evenings I had youth or young adults ministry. Saturdays, I was either cleaning the church, building stage designs, um, or doing something like that, or some type of outreach event that the church was having. And then Sundays is church, literally all day when you're on staff at a church. So 7 days a week, that was like my schedule. And so graphics director, on pastoral care. I was the youth director. I was the director of a youth conference call that we had where I'm not going to say the name of it, but we had kids from all over the nation come and serve and um, rebuild a house in a week and give it away to a veteran. So I was the director of that. And then I was also the design director. So I was over doing all of the stage designs for this church, and a huge stage, huge designs, and they change every 2 to 4 weeks. Basically, when a sermon series changed or when there was like a new season or something, we would do stage designs that were based around that. Now, a lot of times, that's a lot of responsibilities and limited time. Now, what I will say is, I think that was a very unhealthy thing. But what it taught me is like I learned a lot about leadership. I learned a lot about delegation. I learned a lot about, um, you know, time management, my schedule, like learning how to just get stuff done, and that those were all things that I needed to learn, but it was crazy the amount of hours I was working and the amount of time I was putting in. And so fast forward, I get married and I'm this is like this is insane. I'm literally newly married. I'm getting home sometimes at 2, 3 in the morning, sleeping, waking up at 5, 6 o'clock, having to be at the church by 7. That's another thing. Like you were required to be at church by 7 because we had to go into the prayer room from 7 to 8, and we had like corporate prayer as like the staff at the church. And so, anyway, it was crazy, and I was like, I don't know how I can keep up this schedule and have a healthy marriage. And I was like, and it's not fair to my wife. And I was like, and my first ministry is my marriage. It's my wife, my family. Your family is your first ministry. So, anyway, I was just like, I can't do this. And so I started to like try and like just take it upon myself to try to make that more of a priority. And anyway, it led to me ultimately being let go of. And I was like, I had never felt so much peace and relief in my life. Same with my wife. But then from there, I started um, doing door to door because I was like, I don't really know what else to do. I just need to get a job as fast as possible. And I started working for a roofing company doing door to door marketing for leads, like just door knocking. Um, and that was a hustle. So that taught me a lot about myself, that grind. And I did that for a while until a friend of mine who I worked for at the church, he was my supervisor. He had a painting company and he recruited me. And so I worked for him, and kind of the rest is history from there. But now I'm going to bring this full circle. So I had all of that experience as a kid. I had that experience that I had in ministry. And here's what I learned is everything that I shared at the beginning of this episode. The there are a lot of good things that we can do. There are a lot of good things that we can pursue as people, as business owners. But there are things that matter most. At the end of your life, where you stand with God is going to be the most important thing. So, your faith should always be the number one priority of what you do in business and as a leader. And maybe you're listening to this and you're not a person of faith. Okay, and just scrub this part off. Don't listen to me. But for those of you that are, or that you have interest in it, if you are a person of faith, that is your number one priority. Are you representing Christ as a business owner? Are you living a life that is um, showing the fruit of your faith? Number one priority. Second priority, if you're married or you're pursuing a marriage, whatever, your marriage is your second highest priority. If you have kids, your kids are your other highest priority. And your health. So those four things. And then I would say too, your fifth thing would be like your personal finances. So um, if you can't achieve success and grow your business, and if what you're doing is not honoring God, you're doing it wrong. If you what you're doing to grow your business and run your business, get off the ladder, whatever you're doing, if you're doing it and it's leading to your marriage falling apart or problems in your relationship, you're doing it wrong. If you're growing a business and you don't make time for your kids, they don't see their mom or their dad, you don't spend time with them, they you're doing it wrong. If you grow a business and you're successful and you make more money, but you're unhealthy and you're going to die anyway because you don't take care of yourself, you're doing it wrong. And if you are doing business, but yet your personal finances are an absolute wreck and a mess, causing more stress for you, you're doing it wrong. If you can't make these five things a priority and do what you do, then there's something that you're not doing right as a business owner. And I will say the money thing, the the flashiness of like what some business owners show, you're comparing yourself to that without knowing what these five things look like. Maybe they have a huge business. Maybe they're doing two, three times the revenue you're doing, but they're going to get a divorce. Like, dude, I love my wife. My wife, I like, that's more important to me than the money or anything that the business has to offer. She comes first. So if my marriage is failing, the business is gone. Um, my kids, like I said, I grew up without my dad around. So you can look at these people who have tons of success and you can be like, "Oh, I want to double my revenue. I want to do this, I want to do that." But if you have kids and you're not present in their lives, you're gone all the time, and the only time they see you is when you get home at the end of the day and you're grumpy and mad and you don't even want to spend time with them, you're doing it wrong. What does it matter if your kids don't want anything to do with you? If your kids end up broken because they didn't have their mom or their dad around? What does that matter? What is the success? What is the money? What does all of that matter if you lose your relationship with your kids or your kids' lives aren't enriched? Your health, it's like common sense. What's the point? What's the point of the money? What's the point of fame? What's the point of any of it if you're unhealthy and you're falling apart and you die? Like that, I know that's morbid, but what's the point? Fifth, personal finances. This is so like, how can you run a successful business if there's tons of strain on you with your personal finances? Like I'm not, like I said, I'm not a millionaire. I'm not like, but my that's not my ultimate like pursuit, right? My ultimate pursuit is like live below my means so that I don't have a ton of financial strain, so that I can focus on what matters most, so that I can make decisions in my business and have the freedom to do that, to give me what matters most, which is my time. Your time is what matters. You know, more money, more notoriety, more whatever that looks like to you, a bigger house. What's the point of having a giant house that you can't spend any time in? What's the point of any of that? Like, what's the point of building a big business so you can buy a nice boat and then you can't spend any time on it? What's the point of building this big business and making more money because you want to be able to do X more? Like for me, I surf and I fish. Well, build a big business, make more money, but I have no time to fish, surf, or anything like that. What's the point? So again, I would say get clear on what matters most and then build your business around that. Build your business around time freedom. So maybe you need to identify what is the strain on your business right now. What on this foundation is causing you to struggle to build the business to get it to where it needs to be to give you time to get off the ladder, to get off the truck. Now, it sounds easier than it is. And but identify what's struggling, what's not aligning with your why, your priorities over here. Eliminate those things and then get back to what matters most. I think probably one of the most common things that holds people up from being able to get off the ladder is going to be personal finances. If you've got a ton of personal debt and you're just like got debt up to your eyeballs and you can barely survive, well, it's like, okay, well, I feel like I have to go out and hustle from 6 in the morning till 7, 8 o'clock at night because I've got to make more money to support all of this crazy lifestyle. Whereas if you would make it a purpose to eliminate debt, live below your means, practice gratitude, be thankful for what you do have, eliminate that debt, then you'll free up money and time in your business that you can give away and delegate to others. So maybe you're not making 150, $200,000 from your business. Maybe you're making 60 to 80, but you have time. And now you have this money, these resources where you can hire this employee, you can hire this employee, you can pay to implement this software and these systems, and you can get things running where it doesn't necessarily need you in the day to day. That's the ultimate goal. And then it goes from there, it goes down to your people. The goal is to teach your people those same principles. Hey, guys, listen. I know you're ambitious. I know you want to make more money. I know you want to do all this, but please don't come work for me and make work your life and forget about your family. The things, your kids, your health. But again, like, so for those employees, like, hey, how can I coach you? Eliminate debt, eliminate things that are going to put strain on you to make you feel like you got to be at work all the time. Live below your means so that you can come, you can work, you can, you know, and then think about like, don't try to instantly gratify every desire that you have. I've been a business owner now for 8 years. I've wanted a boat for so long. I wanted a boat really bad. I could have gone out, I could have financed one, put myself in a ton of debt to have a boat, but I waited for the right time where I had some money set aside and I went out and I paid cash. And I didn't buy the first boat that I looked at. I looked at tons and tons of boats, just looking through. I'm trying to find the perfect boat and I had a specific budget and I went and I found this boat. It was within my budget and it's a nice little boat. It's not It's not like a 50 to $70,000 flats boat that would be amazing to have, but it gets me on the water. I have fun. It gets my friends on the water with me and my family. It's great. It's reliable. It's a good boat. So, but anyway, all that to say is like delay gratification. Don't buy, you know, like all these like toys and think that that's going to be the answer. Don't think that, you know, a big house, fancy cars is the answer. Like, I don't, there's no problem with those things, but do it in a way that doesn't put financial strain on you that causes you to have to make decisions in your business that hinder the main things, the most important things in your business. Those five things that we talked about: God, your marriage, your kids, your health, your personal finances. So protect those things and build your business around those things. That's what I've done. So like I'm at a point now where it's like I've got amazing guys who work for me. And like these guys have no idea probably how much I truly care about them. Um my hope is that they would understand some of these principles that I've applied for myself. Like my goal is to build a business where these guys can apply these principles so that they have strong faith, they have strong marriages, they are involved in their kids' lives and they're present, they're healthy, and they have strong financial, personal finances. And it's amazing. I sat down with my financial advisor, and we were talking one time, and he told me, he goes, "Hey, you know what, Brandon?" He said, "I have clients who are doctors and lawyers who have debt out their eyeballs, haven't invested because they have so much debt, and they look like they're wealthy because they have a big house, fancy cars, and nice things, but the reality is they're not wealthy." He's like, "And I have clients who have been like who was a butcher for let's say 30 years and lived below their means, invested their entire career, and then when they decided to retire, they retired a multimillionaire." That's it right there. But what happens to us? We compare ourselves to that doctor, that lawyer, that business owner with a 8-figure business, 9-figure business. We compare ourselves to them, but we don't know what things actually look like for them. We don't know what those 5 pillars look like in their life. So don't focus on comparing yourself to anybody else. Practice gratitude, focus on those 5 pillars, and build your business around those 5 pillars. Get off the ladder, get off the truck so you can focus on those 5 things more. Don't do it for money. Don't do it for anything else. Do it for those 5 areas. And look, like you can say like, "Oh, well, I want to like, grow my business and make more money so that I can do this and that for my wife." Like, look, if anybody that you love in your life is going to be like their thankfulness or their gratitude for you is based around the money, like, nah, that's probably not a good thing. But I hope my wife appreciates that I make time for her. And like, I'm not saying like don't have, stability and like take care of your finances and stuff. Like, yes, do that. But the goal should not be like to be some like crazy rich person. If that happens along the way, great. But don't make that your focus. Grow so that you can focus on this. So anyway, I'm going to bring this episode to a close, and I want to say a special thanks to a friend of mine. He's in a local networking group with me. His name is Rich, and he owns a plumbing company. And we just had a conversation a couple weeks ago, and he was like, "Hey, man, you need to do a podcast episode on gratitude." And So that's this podcast episode on gratitude. And so, Rich, if you're listening to this, thanks for the inspiration. And for those of you that have listened to this podcast episode today, I hope you get something out of it. I hope that my blabbering on about my story actually help maybe communicate something, some clarity to you. And I hope that it's beneficial to you and your business, and ultimately, um, you know, the health of your personal life and your business. If you listen today and you're watching live, please share some feedback. Um, if you are watching this on YouTube, it'll go live tomorrow. Um, Please like this content, comment, share your feedback below, share it with somebody else so that they can benefit from it. Subscribe to my channel so that you can see the next episodes and shorts that I'm putting out and other content. And you won't miss that. And then if you're listening on Apple or Spotify, I'd really appreciate it if you would subscribe to the show wherever you're listening to it, any major podcast platform, and rate and review the show. That'll help me to get the podcast out there and reach more people, and share this information with them on how they can grow as a business owner and live life off of the ladder. Um, and as always, thank you so much for listening to this episode. If you need any resources for your business, check the show notes below. I do get credit if you use any of my affiliate links, which I really appreciate. It helps to support me and the show, and continuing to keep this thing going and making it better over time. So I appreciate that. And you can also support the show. And there's also a feature where if you have any questions, feedback, messages, you can message me. Reach out to me on any social media platforms. I would love to connect with you if you listen. Share your feedback. Let me know guests you would like to see on the show, topics you would like me to cover, maybe things that you would like me to talk about on here. Share that feedback with me. I'd love to hear from you. And again, thank you as always, and I'll see you next time on the next episode of the Off the Ladder podcast.